Hello,
everyone.
Welcome to week 5 of Hotpot Talks, season 2. I am Jen Sunshine here with my dear friend and longtime creative partner, David Ng. You might know us as the co-founders and co-artistic directors of Love Intersections, a media arts collective that produces documentary films about QT BIPOCs. We're also members of the Vancouver Artists Labor Union Cooperative, also known as Value Co-op. Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that David and I are beaming this live from the unceded and ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First the land defenders at Fairy Creek. There is a GoFundMe that organizers have put together to support Indigenous land defenders, and the link will be dropped into the chat now. Hotpot Talks is a weekly series live streaming to YouTube and Facebook every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific time, where we have free-flowing conversations with artists, activists, chefs, performers, poets, community organizers about what it means to be an artist facing today's realities, what ethical responsibilities do we have as artists, all the while sharing our favorite hot pot ingredients. At this season, we continue these conversations on topics ranging from anti-Asian racism, BIPOC futurity, Chinatown solidarity, diasporic food cultures, and interrogating the boundaries between everyday activism, fine art, and cultural work.
So why Hotpot Talks? We co-founded Love Intersections on the core principles of collaboration, invitation, and being in relationship with communities to tell stories that intervened on systems such as race, gender, sexuality, class, and ableism. And a core part of our work as social practice artists has been to interrogate the boundaries of art, philosophy, community work, and activism. And so when the pandemic happened earlier last year, and a lot of our creative practices that involve working with communities and being in community in person took a pause, we imagined Hotpot Talks as a way to continue this dialogue on art and culture production with guests that we wanted to connect with that had contributed to this work. And we also wanted to mention Nancy, one of our guests today, is one of the board members of Love Intersections as well. Yay.
Before we introduce Nancy Lee and Kiran Bhumber, I want to thank our incredible team, Cameron, our lead project coordinator, and Lamia, our social media coordinator, who helped make Hotpot Talks a reality. So for this episode of Hotpot Talks, we talked to interdisciplinary media artists, Nancy Lee and Kiran Bhumber, creators of Union, a speculative sci-fi exhibition centered around a narrative of two beings discovering their ancestral memories through the longing for touch and the rituals practiced in their post-apocalyptic wedding ceremony. The exhibition incorporates XR, performance, sculpture, multi-channel sound, and video installation, drawing on parallels between our world and the speculative futures while working through the artist's diasporic identities. Union is a potent critique of modern surveillance capitalism, but also a gesture towards hope through the generative possibilities of intimacy, performativity, and presence. Welcome, Nancy and Kiran.
Hey, guys.
How's it going?
Good. How are you both doing?
We're okay. We are a little dead today because we have been filming for 14 hours yesterday and Monday, the hottest record-breaking day for the Pacific Northwest. We were like lugging gear and moving, just
3 flights of stairs.
Oh my God.
So we're trying, but you two get it because you two are also media artists and have extensive experience and knowledge working on film sets, so you get it as well.
Yeah, I've never had to work on the hottest day ever recorded. I've worked on hot days, but not the hottest day. I was chilling on Monday.
Yeah. So I'm curious, I know both of you, but I'm curious, how did you guys meet? And if you can tell us a little bit about how you guys came to collaborate together.
Yeah, so we actually met on a couple occasions or a few occasions before we started collaborating with one another. I had been to a couple of shows that Nancy organized and produced, one of which kind of catapulted this desire for our first collaboration. And this show, I can't remember what it was called. Remember what
it was an EP party. It was an EP. It was like, I think it was there's 3 EPs being released that party. But your friend, Block Tree,
Brandon
was releasing one of the EPs that were coming out.
And I remember my friend Tanya was working merch for him.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And she was my roommate.
Oh,
yeah. So we all went into Nancy's studio, and I remember there was live performances going on, there was projections, and then there were swing sets. And the swing sets were allowing.
Oh yes, the swing sets.
The swing sets. You remember that, right?
You've been to a party with swing sets there,
yes,
right?
Definitely.
Oh my God, I had so much fun.
Yeah. One of the best parties.
When is there swing sets at a party, right?
Yeah.
So, obviously, just swinging with people, watching people swing. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, it would be cool if somehow the swings were tied into some sort of interactivity with the projections that were going on. Because there were a couple of projections that were adjacent to the swings. And then fast forward to New Forms Festival in like 2014.
I think 2014.
2014. I met Nancy again, volunteering, and I remember specifically that one of the techs wanted us to paint tables black, even though they were going to get covered by black fabric
in a super dark
place. But the only thing that was available were these teeny tiny paintbrushes, and so we had to sit there and paint
with like this. They're like the smallest brush ever. And it was so ridiculous that we were both just like stuck doing this one task that we knew it was kind of futile because we're like,
they're gonna get covered.
They're gonna cover this. It's like, and then they were watering down the black paint. I don't know. It was like production. It was just kind of a weird experience, and but we're both just like painting this table because I'm still down to do whatever it takes to help, right? But we're just like talking about like, okay, so if we were to show something at this festival, what would we make?
Yeah.
And then we start talking about the swing sets. Because I was like, like those swing sets, I actually like wanted it to be interactive, blah, blah, blah. Just like didn't have the blah, blah, blah skills to make it happen. And then Kiran was like, oh, like I know how to make it interactive. I know how to use like Arduinos and accelerometers and gyroscopes.
Yeah. And then, we set up a meeting. I came prepared.
She came super prepared. She showed up at a meeting at like our town. She had a laptop and she had a demo. Like super short USB.
Wow.
Had an Arduino with an accelerometer in there already. I think it was
it was the accelerometer watch.
Oh, right.
It was just a demo. It was just whatever accelerometer I had available was a watch. And so I just came with a really simple like prototype, like, oh, you get the idea, right? Like sticking motion.
Wow.
She showed me the patch, right? It was like, okay, the values and she showed me the data that she was getting. Like she made the patch and the patch was like showing the information. So I'm like, okay, I know you're serious. Because now we have something to build on.
So did you make the swing, the interactive swing?
Oh, we built everything.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, we had to learn how to I had to learn how to solder and shit and I hadn't used Arduinos and gyroscopes or accelerometers prior to that, right?
Yeah, wow, cool.
I hadn't really either. Yeah, it was like
it was a learning curve for sure for both of us. Yeah, to just figure it out how to handle that kind of hardware, like learning how to wire the different wires into the pins into the Arduino and stuff like that, and then having sparsing the data between the two sensors, the accelerometer, parsing the data because sparsing.
Yeah. And then also just physically attaching it to and then figuring out okay, cool, let's just test it out, see what values are coming in, and then we did install it, our first version.
A single swing.
just affecting a very simple parameter. I think it was like a Zoom parameter.
Yeah, it was something, but it was like I think it was like a proof of concept that like it's possible. We have one Arduino and we're capable of doing it. And we had the big ugly gray box, remember?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like it was not good. Like the aesthetics of the you know, we had like it was like janky, like cut out. There was like I think remember we had to like drill the hole.
So DIY.
I mean, we've improved it afterwards, but that was just like a proof of concept.
I mean, we were babies. Yeah. It was like.
Did you say you were babies?
Yeah, like 2014.
Well, I'm curious. I'm curious because I'm hearing a bit about your process, and I want to get into union. But when I watched the artist talk video that was in the gallery, and one of the things that you guys talked about was like the focus on process instead of outcome, and that you know, Jen and I mean, of course, it's in a different context. We apply this in documentary. We don't come into something with a script. It's all about the relationships that we cultivate with the you know, the people that we're collaborating with. I'm curious, what does that look like for you guys in terms of your practice when you're focusing on sort of the process and not necessarily the output?
Yeah, I think it can get really messy and disorganized.
Because we're messy and disorganized.
We're messy and disorganized.
But Kiran, you brought in a demo and you were like super prepared.
I don't really believe that.
Desk was not.
Yeah, but my desk was messy.
Right.
Yeah. Like my screen was messy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Her backpack and the cables were messy.
Okay.
Right.
Physically quite messy.
Got it.
Yeah. I'm also like, I'm no better. Like when we are traveling together, it's like 2 suitcases that explodes into a room. Yeah,
wow.
So you would not like traveling with us yet.
No, I know this. Okay, so for people that don't know, Nancy and I often collaborate as well. We've collaborated on with Current, Feminist Electronic Art Symposium. We've also collaborated on with the Get It Together workshop series. And one of the things that is a major difference between the two of us is how we organize like files and writing and all of that. So as we're collaborating, I am simultaneously organizing around Nancy like live, and then Nancy will like see that I'm doing that. I was like, oh yeah, thanks for organizing all that, and you'll just kind of point it out live. It's hilarious, and actually I enjoy it because it's refreshing because it gives me another layer to work with.
Right, that's great, because the thing is I just don't even see the mess, you know, like that's the problem, is like I don't really see it. Like I just like my brain just bypasses it, and then like
it's just kind of like okay, on to the next thing.
Okay, that's a pile of mess, right? But that's it's not impeding on me doing the next thing.
Yeah.
So for the two of you, like, do you have different messes or different kinds of messes, or are they like the similar or the same?
I feel like I've gotten better because I've had to live with someone who doesn't like it.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's like physical mess, right? That's like
that's
different. That's different. That's like folding your laundry and stuff like that.
But it does seep into
like cable management.
Oh, okay, something to think about.
Cable management.
No.
Yeah. I'm like, no. I think our messes are. I think physically maybe in a similar thing in this like realm. Like, I mean, we saw those photos that we were looking through when we were doing those artist talks. It's like cable management, like always terrible. But
it's
file management similarly kind of like disorienting.
But somehow from this messy cohesion or whatever, I mean, the union was incredible. I mean, it was honestly incredible. How does can you give us a sense of how, like a piece of the process that maybe we can start with the sound installation? Like, how did those conversations come about? Because Jen and I, you invited us to a really early conversation around what this might look like. around like even marriage ceremonies in our cultures. And then from that, I think probably a year later, you guys also came up with all of these other pieces. Can you give us like maybe a snippet of what that looks like?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think what started that conversation about the sound installation was going to the gallery and seeing that octagonal space where the sound installation is. And, it kind of reminded us of a sacred space, or like a space where one witnesses. And it just felt like a really good opportunity to immerse people in sound and in visuals, because we don't have that opportunity to do that type of stuff in Vancouver. In terms of like a multi-channel array with 16 speakers, we don't have anywhere where the public can go and experience it and also experiment with it. And so I really wanted to use that opportunity to create something where users become implicated and become inside the 3 different union worlds. Yeah, so they're like being watched and also being a witness to the spiritual union. Because originally, Nancy and I wanted to do a performance in that space as well. So the idea of it becoming a performance space into an interactive installation made more sense, where the audience members are the performers instead of us being the performers.
Cool. Could you just maybe quickly describe for people who are watching that haven't seen Union and this installation, maybe could you just give a little bit of context for that world?
Yeah. So in the last gallery in Richmond Art Gallery, there's a 16-channel audio-visual installation, and it's done in collaboration with audio designer Alexander Vucekovich and new media artist Sammy Chen. And when you walk through the gallery, prior to the Gallery 3, you're given all this experience of the 2 different characters, so mine and Nancy's characters, and our relationship between the 3 different worlds, them being the dystopian world, the cyber world, and then the union world. And when you come into Gallery 3, you become an actual member in this society, in this world. And so we're using interactive technologies. So we're using what's called blob tracking, using a depth sensor. And so that's attached above. And from there, we're able to see where exactly you are in space. And by doing that, we're able to change projections and change sounds as you move through the space.
Amazing.
Yeah. I think the main thing, I think like when we first went in there too, like I felt like, like Kiran was also like pretty drawn to do something sonically in that space too. And I feel like in terms of like collaborating, it's also just like kind of like feeling the vibe, it's like, okay, I knew Kiran wanted to do something sound wise in the space, so I'm just going to get out of the way and just like give her a lot of space to like conceptualize, because you took the lead on that entire installation, so I just kind of got out of the way, and I would support and create materials for it as whatever was needed, and offer some like visual kind of related visual kind of direction in terms of like want like those lines between the character between the audience members, like to like illustrate that they're being surveilled, and like some of the direct some of the visual stuff, but kind of largely, pretty hands-off approach. Usually, like when I work with Kiran, like when she does sound stuff, I'm like usually pretty hands-off. Right. I think there's also that too, like in terms of collaboration, chemistry, and dynamic. It's like I'm not really ever telling her what to do, for sound. Like I don't care, like it's not my expertise. Like why would I say something about something that I didn't spend all this time studying for?
And then likewise too with the 2-channel film, right?
Yeah.
And tell you
Yeah, she was just like, whatever, do whatever. Do whatever, and I'll make the sound for it, make the sound design. That one was also done in collaboration with Alexander Zekovich, too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's just amazing walking. Oh, I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Is it just me? Walking into the gallery, I had to really, I stood there for a good minute trying to figure out where I should orient myself, and like I became so increasingly aware of my like spatial awareness in order to figure out where exactly should I stand to take it all in. And so I kind of chose like right between the films and sort of slightly next to the sculpture of the two of you, so that I can essentially like place myself in the middle of that space. I don't know if that's necessarily what everyone's individual experience was like, because some people, depending on their personality and experience with galleries, they might go to the wall, right, like first. Also, another thing that I immediately noticed was just the fabric, or the material rather, of the expanse, the black expanse. So it's just like all plastic bags, right? Black bags. And that was like my first initial, like the first material thing that I noticed. Anyway, I there's no question in there. I just wanted to remark upon that because I was so blown away, honestly. I know both of you, were friends. And so I was just in awe and was so inspired. And I immediately like pulled David aside and was like, this is what we want to do, in the future. And this is like so what we aspire to do. So it was just mind blowing.
Thank you.
Yeah, it should have had a longer run.
Yeah.
I mean, it was on for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a lot of people went, the gallery attendants said that like the numbers of going there, like people attending, it was like their pre-COVID attendance numbers.
Wow. Yeah.
So,
Speaking of COVID, we had this chat before, but because when Jen and I had our show at the Sum Gallery, a lot of the work on the themes of like queer Asian futures, it was like, if people can remember, like February 2020 we opened and we closed April 4th, right? And so all of this like context, like there's a shot of Kendall, for example, wearing a sequined mask, which we shot in 2018, and that was very avant-garde, right? And then all of a sudden the mask, you see the mask in 2020 or 2020, it has different context. So I'm curious, and we kind of chatted about this before, like one of the main themes of the show was around like a world where there's no intimacy or intimacy is forbidden, is it? Yeah, it's only interfaced through this in a virtual space. I'm wondering, I know that was not your intention to make a note about the pandemic and quarantine, but I'm wondering, what was that journey like, or experience like, or did you hear like feedback about that? Because when I saw that, I was like, oh, COVID, right? Because that's just what's on my mind, and of course that's not your intention, but I'm curious about that your experience of that.
I think ideas, themes of like isolation and things like that, those are common themes that we see in science fiction already. Right. And, like you have people living in pods, like with the Matrix and things. There's like, these are like common themes that have already been explored. So thematically, it's not new. But I think because COVID happened, like the themes like hit differently for people.
Yeah.
And, definitely I think COVID did play into the work for sure, because like we had to navigate the protocols ourselves. And being like, okay, like we're having a meeting right now, like should we do it outside? Like I've been seeing you every single day for the last like however long, but it's like now this new restriction, like how do we navigate that? Like how do we negotiate our comfort levels and all that stuff? And I think like that definitely added elements into like maybe the details of the narrative and how it like manifested. Like we had like a general synopsis for the piece, but then like in terms of like the actual like details, you know, like those clear masks that we have in the film, like that was just some shit that Facebook sold to me. You know,
what?
I was advertised it.
Making science fiction and making some like lesbian science. I was getting like all these. Remember, I was sending you all these like lesbian dating app.
Oh my God.
I have like a whole screenshot series of different lesbian dating app stuff because Facebook was like reading my messages and was like, oh, this person a lesbian trying to get married or trying to date or something. So I was getting like for the longest time I was getting like lesbian dating app ads and then like COVID like face shield related stuff.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I would say that you know, we came up with the synopsis in late 2018, but definitely everything got heightened during the process where even the film shoot, it was just so surreal to be like the only two people on set that can get close to one another. And just feeling like how lucky we are to have that moment, or even when we were rehearsing and being close with one another. And I think that those emotions really got, really manifested and transcended the gallery space, where we did want to physically evoke the sense of touch. So like a lot of textures in the space or a lot of sounds in the space.
Touch definitely became, I think touch was not as central when we were thinking about the concept, and then touch became this like central theme because we couldn't touch, you know. So that kind of became this other thing, and I think as COVID developed, like because we were still deciding, we didn't know what we're going to do with the sculpture and the scans, like 3D scans that we did with Ian Nakamoto. So we were kind of like trying to figure that out, and I think the COVID protocols and all the restrictions that kind of drove us in the direction of picking a scan where like touch is really central to the visual elements of like the shape and the form, like with the hands and stuff. So like I think touch became this thing that became like a big part of the project that I don't think in 2018 that was like something that we had really thought of or planned for.
And also, you know, thinking about performance as well and performativity, because we weren't able to perform in the space. So how do we activate the space not through like non-normative ways of what we know as performance?
What were your original plans in terms of that? What did that performance look like?
Yeah, I mean, we had a loose idea of us being in our gowns, actually.
Wow.
And performing in the sound installation space.
Probably some vocal stuff. I imagine.
We also wanted live musicians as well. To really feel like a ceremony.
The sing and dance, you know, we just want to sing and dance. Like that's really it. Wear nice shit and sing and dance. Like that's what life is for.
That's hilarious. Are you guys working on anything new?
Oh, we're still.
You're still no. This is
still kind of like wrapping up. I think. Yeah. It's like it's not quite wrapped up yet, so like, I'm still kind of like dealing with that pieces.
Definitely need a break from something as big as that project too. Just like getting back to exploring,
working for other people,
working on other projects that aren't mine.
I'm like okay not looking at a budget for a long time. Transfer and look at a budget for a little bit.
I'm in the same place.
We still up our budgets and shit. So it's kind of it's a process. So I think I feel like even though the exhibition is done, like I still feel like we're like still in it. We're still in it. We're still doing a lot of the back end like admin stuff. Back end admin. There's a lot of back end admin.
I want to switch gears a little bit, and we'll come back to Union because we still have so many questions. But I'm just so curious, in your respective like individual arts practice, like Nancy, I feel like I know you better in the sense that I know that you're mostly self-taught, but you like went to med school, and Kiran.
I didn't go to med school. I was on my pre-med.
Oh, you were pre-med. Okay, my apologies. Can
I
you?
wouldn't be here if I went to med school.
Yeah.
Really
but I am curious about both of your kind of like upbringing and background, and in some ways this ties into Union, because you really try to look into, not in a nostalgic way, but just in terms of like when you're sourcing material, like what is the cultural context from which you're both from. I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about, like what was your childhood like and upbringing, where and how did you grow up?
You know, when I was living through it as a child, like it didn't seem anything. And then when I grew up, I got older and then met people with like normal families. Mm-hmm. Then I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, we talked a lot. I think
we talked a lot about that.
With this union, we talked a lot about our family and our family histories.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And like processing like the trauma that kind of came from that and using it as a way to kind of like transform it into like words or movement. Like I definitely, like I moved around a lot growing up, you know, and like, you know, like my mom was a single mother, like since I was like 9 or so. And, you know, and my mom also had like a chronic like liver illness. So it was actually like really ill all the time. So I think like growing up, it was like, I had like a hustler's mentality. Like I was like, you know, I don't need no man. I have to hustle my ass off. Cause it's like, I had that like attitude growing up with a single mom, you know? So I feel like that kind of like translated into like my adult life and like how I perceive my own worth and how I value my own like financial independence as well too. I think like it's really important for me to be independent because of what I lived through and saw what happened, you know, with my parents and stuff like that, and with my family.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot that I can echo as well, and I think that's what makes this project, and also I would say like our collaboration a lot stronger, is that we can connect with our past. But yeah, I grew up with my father being mentally ill, and within the like Punjabi Sikh community, you know, during that time in like the 90s, no one really talked about mental illness and mental health, you know, even outside of that community. And so I ended up growing up with a single mother as well. And because of this like non-normative household that I was a part of, it really alienated me from my Punjabi heritage. And I always felt like, you know, my family was the gatekeeper, or like, you know, community members were gatekeepers of accessing my culture. And it's only been in the last few years where I've interrogated that and have been drawn to making work that connects me to my culture, and realizing that I can create my own path and my own connections, and I have agency to reach out to the community, and I can create the culture that I want. And all of those themes were definitely resonated with Union.
Yeah, I had a similar. What you guys are mentioning resonates with me so much too. I mean, I'm just thinking about like Jen. I'm also thinking about like, you know, just parts of my own culture that I'm trying to explore. I'm thinking of that ancestral veneration ceremony, Jen, when we filmed that, and the entire time we were like, "Are we doing this right? Are we doing this right?" Because I never grew up with it, because it's considered a pagan practice in evangelical Christian upbringing, right? And so when we were exploring this, it as this as a scene in Yellow Peril, we had all of these like anxieties around like how are we honoring our ancestors, and are we doing it right, as if there's a right way to honor your ancestors, right? And so similarly, like sort of carving out your own. I'm thinking it's been a journey for me too to figure out what is the way that I also place my ancestors in my sort of path, I guess.
Did we all have the same upbringing in terms of being outsiders? Even just hearing what you're saying was so resonating, because David and I have this conversation all the time. And in fact, just recently we were talking about like in the kind of art world, two things. One is the self-orientalizing, right? In terms of like how we produce art. And then the other being is like, how much trauma are we actually like putting forward? And also, is everything all trauma informed so that you can't even escape that? So whatever you produce is always going to have an element of trauma. I don't know, but it is really interesting that this is such a common narrative for like BIPOCs, that it's, and I still haven't grown tired of hearing all of the different stories that are out there.
Yeah, I think it's like, it's a common experience, you know, growing up here. And I wanted to comment on what you were saying, David, like, you know, like kind of like, how do you honor your ancestors? And I think through this project, what we have learned, where we have landed, is that like we are our ancestors. Like our ancestors like lives within us. Like we are made out of the same things. So we are just a reincarnation of our ancestors.
Yeah.
So whatever you do can't be wrong.
Yeah,
Right.
and then I also think about too, you know, when you talk about like, oh, what is the right way of performing this ritual? Da 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 da. It's like we have to remember that actually happens to every single generation. You know, our parents are like, how do you do this? Our parents are like, how do you do this? So each generation, these rituals and performances are changing.
Yeah.
It's like your mom, David.
Yeah, it was. I think she's watching too today. She RSVP'd for this one for some reason. But it's the same thing, like because my cousin's getting married, and just for some reason, just because my part of like my aunties on my dad's side are quite traditional in the sense of traditional Chinese medicine, and so I just placed a lot of like, oh, okay, so the elders in my family or the people that are in the generation above me know everything about every ceremony, right? And so when Kai asked me to help plan her wedding, I asked my mom. I was like, "So how does the Chinese wedding, traditional Chinese wedding happen? How did you learn about this, right?" And she said the exact same thing. She's like, "David, I had no idea. I had to ask my dad, who had to ask the people around him because he had no idea neither, right?" Yeah.
So you're doing it right.
Yeah,
we're all doing it right. The fact that we're alive and doing it, we're doing it right.
Yeah. I was also going to quickly make a joke, Nancy, when you were mentioning being financially independent, but then you chose to be an artist.
Well, you know, it's like I'm an artist, but I'm also like
Nancy's still a hustler.
Yeah, like I think, you know, it's not that I chose to be an artist. Like honestly, like to me, like
art chose me.
Yeah, art chose me actually. You know, I never planned to do this, you know, so it was like, I think for me, like the identity of being an artist is not like, it's not fixed, you know, like I can become something else like in a couple years, you know. It's like identities are always, who we are is always changing and flowing and based on what's going on, you know. Maybe in like 10 years I'm gonna be like, you know, what is it, like I don't know, maybe I'll be like a lawyer, or I don't know, like maybe I'll get into something else, who knows. But I think like as in this like moment in time, this is what I'm doing. But like my core is not changing. I'm just, you know, I'm just learning different tools, different softwares, different skill set, you know.
Yeah. It's so similar to, I mean, you know, when Jen and I started Love Intersections, I never thought, well, first, I never thought I'd be hosting Hotpot Talks or doing any of the other stuff that we've been doing, right? It's really just been a medium for us to, same thing, for us to talk about, you know, intersectionality and race and some of the other things that are important to us. But yeah, it's interesting just to see how our practices evolve from something that we didn't really imagine at the very beginning.
I always wanted to be an artist, even when I was a little kid. But I went through like, oh, I want to be a visual artist, or like, oh, I want to be a dancer, or all this stuff. But I didn't think I was actually going to be an artist. Like it was like, oh, I want to be an artist, but it's probably not going to happen. So I need to figure out how to make money. And I'm still amazed that it is happening.
And we're artists, but it's like it's not my only thing.
Identity.
Right? Like you have to do other work. Like, you're producing other. I direct other things. I get hired to do other. I'm not just doing like solo art stuff all the time. Like I'm running a studio. Like I still like you're juggling multiple things in order. I think at the end of it, like going back to what you said about process earlier in like our process is that we're not focused on the outcome. It's also like you're not doing the process so like, oh, I can be the ideal of an artist. It's like I'm only doing what I'm doing right now because this is a way that I can spend time with people I want to spend time with. Like this career path or this path that I'm taking right now is like the way that it helps you manifest the relationships I want to manifest.
Yeah. Well, and it's also, our practice isn't just determined by the output, right? I'm just thinking as we're talking about this, like Jen and I have these conversations all the time, like, Jen's facilitation work, which often gets sort of relegated to like, community work or whatever. I mean, it's not considered an arts practice, but it's fundamentally a part of your practice, Jen, and fundamentally a part of Love Intersections, right? And so I'm thinking, even like Nancy, what you're saying about like producing and running a studio, that's all a part of your practice, but only certain pieces of it, the outputs get sort of given a certain capitalist value or some sort of, what's the term? Commodification, right?
People only see like the stuff that the content, whatever that is that you put out, right? But at the end of the day, like that is just like the tip of the iceberg, right? It's like all the other things that have to happen. It's like with Union, it's like the reason why we were able to do the project the way we did it is because we have access to my studio space that we were able to set up permanently for a while to do all this work. And it was like a factory, and there were like
it was the Union factory.
It was literally a factory. They were doing sound installation stuff with like Alex and Sammy.
Wow.
And I'm working on the sculpture.
I'm just standing away on the sculpture like hours on end, So it's like, but it's like in order for me to have that space, I've had to have that relationship with my roommate, Freaky, and then also like, figuring out how to monetize the space too, to like keep it up and going and stuff. So like there's a lot of other things that kind of come into play to like make this project possible, because there's a lot of logistical and resources that you need in order to like manifest like an artistic project too. Because like things aren't free in the city.
Kiran, would you say that you're a musician first before an artist?
I don't.
Because you did your master's in music.
No, I didn't.
You didn't.
Arts.
Oh, what I totally had a different memory.
Yeah, so I guess with that, I've put myself under media art just because that kind of encompasses all of it.
Okay.
Sometimes I find it hard to label myself as a musician because I don't play that often, or I don't perform on an instrument that often.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm still a musician.
Yeah, one of the many boxes.
Yeah, I think the music for me growing up, like that was my coping mechanism.
Yeah.
Getting lost in music, blasting music in my room. Yeah. So I resonate deeply with being a musician.
That's because that's like, and perhaps this is my own projection, but that's like, it's like, that's what exudes from you or out of you. Like, that's how that's how I
like it's my first love. Yeah. And I would definitely say that, like definitely going to music school, like going to actual music school was
Mm.
what like kind of teetered that love
Mhm.
off,
Mhm.
just because of that pressure of having to perform. And I think that's why I don't perform as much as I used to.
Mm.
Yeah.
Was there?
Partying is my first love. I think I got into art through partying.
Didn't we all?
As a teenager,
We all.
rebellious teenager. You know, I was like,
Yeah.
how do I get into all the raves?
Yeah. I mean, I got into running events, managing events, because I love going to events and parties.
That's what it is. I want to be around the people.
Yeah.
Yeah. We want to have fun.
David, you had a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask. We kind of talked about this in the pre-interview. Jen, you mentioned the score, one of the scores in Union. Was there an orchestral score in it?
Yeah, so we recorded double bass, guitar, and drums.
Wow.
No, piano.
Percussive instruments.
Percussive instruments, yeah.
Yeah.
There were lots of gongs. We didn't record gongs, but there were lots of gongs.
Yeah. Amazing. And and you guys did that during COVID too?
Yeah. It was actually pretty crazy because there was one day where we were recording film, and then I had to go to the music studio where we were recording to record the musicians. Yeah. I would say with my work, and especially this work, it was important to have organic instruments combined with electronic instruments, because I've found in my experience and going to see works, when you are doing something that is immersive and multi-channel, it can get overwhelming and alienating when you just have electronic instruments all around.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
Because you two also contributed your own vocals, right?
Yeah.
What was that process like to kind of harmonize?
I had to do lots of vocal practice because I don't really do any stuff, so I had to get like a vocal training crash course on like how to breathe and use my diaphragm and stuff.
Yeah. I remember to keep Nancy in time.
Yeah.
She's teaching how to keep in time, right?
And conducting me. She was doing all this conducting and stuff. I was just like, gotta go quieter. Quieter.
Crescendo.
Well, I've always applied, because as a facilitator, I've always applied that role in other contexts. So for like DJs on a dance floor, that's a facilitator, facilitating in a room. A conductor is a facilitator standing in front of the orchestra, right? Like, so what is it that you're trying to, you're trying to manipulate the environment, whether that's a sonic environment or the physical environment, like all of those things are taken into consideration as a facilitator or conductor or DJ.
Exactly.
I'll take that. I'm DJ conductor now.
Is that your new role?
Yeah, I'm hired as a conductor.
That's what I thought I was going to. I thought I was going to be a music teacher. That's what I thought I was going to be after school. I was like, well, I guess I gotta find a teaching gig.
She had a lot of tools to teach me how to breathe.
Yeah.
So that was useful.
Well, yeah, we did breathing gym.
We did a bunch of stuff, like she like had all these like back pocket tools and like vocal like stuff and music stuff. So I was like, oh great, like perfect. All that music education.
Dusted off some binders.
Yeah. So it was quite useful.
Yeah, because it's one of the things that I became increasingly aware of is in the last year, because we've all transitioned to working from home, and so we're in front of a computer for long periods of time and also sitting. I realized that when I am facilitating something or moderating something or speaking, it's so different sitting down versus when I'm out in the world pre-pandemic and I'm standing and facilitating and standing and moderating, what have you. And I much prefer standing because I can somehow utilize my diaphragm more than when I'm sitting. So I became increasingly aware that I'm just breathing wrong and I'm speaking wrong this whole year. And I'm using like the back of my throat, and therefore I'm straining. I don't have enough longevity. All of those things. I was like, oh my God, I don't know anything.
Well, also body language communication.
It's
exactly
present, right?
Yeah.
It's like commanding a group of people. And your sense of self. When you're standing versus sitting. Two very different things.
Well, and just, what Nancy said, it reminded me, like, the no eye contact thing is really, really jarring. And I've noticed now the opposite. So, like, I guess almost year and a half of facilitating through a screen, and then having to have in-person conversations with people where people are staring into my eyes. It feels like they're staring into my soul, because I'm just not used to it anymore. It's like, why are you looking at me? It's going to be an interesting adjustment.
I'm a Scorpio, so I'm into that intensity.
I definitely have felt the awkwardness for sure. Where it's like you're used to seeing certain people on Zoom. And in person, you're like, whoa. How do I interact with you?
Well, the good thing is that everyone is on the same page for the most part, and just really awkward. And we're all going to take a lot of time to readjust back into normalcy.
We have 9 minutes left, but I wanted to poke into, I guess it's a bit of a heavy topic to end on. But in our pre-interview as well, we talked about sort of our shared journeys navigating issues of race in the art world, and some of the and some of the work that you guys are hoping to unpack, and which really aligns with the work that we're trying to do around, how do we interact with institutions, how do we interact with,
white people,
like white people, but also like white people in galleries, and that hold a lot of power, right? I don't really know if I have a question on that, but maybe just riffing off of the last conversation we have, if you had any other thoughts on the conversations that you guys want to have in the community. I'm thinking like around like maybe even the isolation of us experiencing this. Like, I think one of the biggest things we talked about was like, oh my God, we're experiencing the same thing, right?
Exactly. It's like, trust your gut. If you feel something funny, it's happening, and if you feel something funny and it's happening, just talk to other people, because you'll really quickly find out how common it is to like, to interact with institutions and feel like you're tokenized, or not being treated properly, or like microaggressions and stuff like that. All it takes is just to like reach out to other people. And I think at the end of the day, it's important to know that your worth is not, your worth of who you are has nothing to do with institutions. Like, like institutions can like give you awards, they can, give you space to show work, they can like book you and all that stuff. But like their reasoning for wanting to do that is, it might not be has anything to do with like the value. It has nothing to do with the value of your work, really. Like I feel like they have their own institutional agendas, and often their own institutional like narratives and biases. So, like, just like, I think it's just important to be grounded in the relationships that you already have as artists, and like get your validation like through the relationship, through the quality of the relationships that you already have, rather than through these like councils or institutions, because then you'll get crushed like all the time.
Like I was just thinking about, sorry, go ahead, Kiran.
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, the biggest learning experience for us has been that, we're not alone, that there's so many other people who have gone through, similar experiences. And I think, most importantly is talking to peers and building like support networks to to be able to go through the process.
Yeah, because so much. I'm just thinking, as you guys are talking, like in so many instances, like because of the way we work in isolation, often, like we're often gaslit to think that we're being difficult, when it's like, no,
Exactly.
this is actually like race at play right now.
This is inequality at play,
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And it happens, and when even in that short hour and a half conversation that we had, we were like, oh, that happened to you from this place too, or all of these other patterns that you start to uncover, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think at the end we just need to start organizing more together and start communicating with each other more about these experiences and stop staying silent about it.
Yeah.
And then that's how we can like have solidarity with each other, and that's a better way to mobilize.
Yeah, and I think not being worried about speaking up and being reprimanded, because at the end of the day, there is power in numbers. So if we do just keep on continuing this conversation, we will end up somewhere better.
I hope so.
I hope so.
Even our talk, I think that felt a lot better. We all felt a lot better after that too.
Yeah,
hearing
just hearing other people's experiences, it makes me feel like, oh, I'm not crazy.
Yeah, like
I'm not difficult.
Crazy.
Like this is happening. It's just like even just sharing that is like a healing experience.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, we only have a couple minutes left. Why don't we end on the question that we ask almost every guest?
It's our favorite question.
We kind of adjusted it this season though. So, what's your favorite or memorable Hotpot experience?
Memorable Hotpot experience. I haven't had a Hotpot in so long because you got this COVID thing going on. You can't share shit,
I can't remember the last time I had a Hotpot.
It's been a minute. Actually, that's not true. I have like a sukiyaki, like Japanese Hotpot sometimes.
Okay, yeah, that counts.
But most memorable, I feel like most memorable experience is probably like when you get like that stomach ache after, and then and you're like, oh shit, I shouldn't have gone the super spicy route. Or should have ate less of that.
I remember you just texting me the next day.
So, but I was gonna say I do have Hotpot ingredient. I have cilantro and some garlic because I'm Taiwanese and everything needs to have cilantro and garlic. So I could be dipped into a Hotpot.
How about you, Kiran?
Or even an ingredient too.
I'm just like reminded of, I worked at a seniors residence at one point in time as a server. And I'm just reminded of like the kitchen making Hotpot for the seniors. And they were really deterred by like anything that wasn't like meat and potatoes, and I just remember having to send back a lot of Hotpot.
People don't know what's up.
I'm just fancy seniors, just don't
white seniors.
Is it true? Just the older you get, the less experimental or open you are to just like other experience? I don't know.
No, at the same time, it's like, who cares? Your taste buds are running out. Like, just never.
Yeah. I mean, I understand like seniors. Maybe sometimes it's like maybe digestive stuff. There's stuff that they're not used to. But if the Hotpot is not like Sichuan Hotpot and super spicy,
no, it definitely wasn't.
It was a really fancy place too.
Yeah.
So.
No, I'm so.
I just like to be picky.
Yeah, I'm so basic now. I love a good tomato soup base. Just a very
so
generic
mild.
Mild soup base.
This is you aging.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much, Kiran and Nancy. This was such a fun conversation. Do you have any last minute words for our audience that you want to share?
Well, thanks for having us.
Fun.
This is a nice combo, and I hope we get to have more off-camera combos.
More outdoor get-togethers when it's not super scorched.
Yeah, for sure. Hope queer things come back soon. I'm dying to queer things. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Happy Pride, everybody. Happy Pride. 1 month. For all the corporate logos have logos on them.
Thank you both.
Thank you both.
Okay, let's announce our next guest for week 6. Who is it?
It is Naya Lewis. Yes. Looking forward to talking to her. Yeah,
same time, same place.
Tune in at 5 p.m. Next Wednesday. Talk to you all next week.
Stay cool, everyone. Bye.
Bye.